The council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Kelthrin projected the holographic star chart above the obsidian table. 300 systems glowed in soft blue, the territories humanity had quietly settled over the past 2 centuries. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe for more HFY stories. No treaties, Kelthrin said, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. No defensive pacts, no trade alliances, no mutual aid agreements. He gestured at the empty space surrounding the human systems. They stand completely alone. Council Prime Vashtar leaned forward, her 4 eyes narrowing as she studied the display. The Therian coalition had ruled this sector for 6,000 years. They understood power. They understood alliances. What they understood the intricate web of obligations and treaties that bound civilizations together in mutual survival. Humans apparently understood none of this. Confirm the intelligence, Vashtar said. Kelthrin's claws danced across the holographic controls. Data streams cascaded through the air, intercepted communications, trade manifests, diplomatic cables. Our operatives have monitored human activity for 5 standard cycles. 0 formal alliance structures. 0 treaty negotiations with neighboring powers. They maintain cordial trade relationships, but nothing binding, nothing we couldn't sever with economic pressure. Military strength? This from General Krath, his scales rippling with barely concealed eagerness. Adequate for self-defense, Kelthrin replied. 23 known capital ships, perhaps 200 support vessels. Advanced enough, but... He paused for effect. They're spread across 300 systems. Diluted. Vulnerable. Councillor Mevrin, oldest of the assembly, tapped her crystalline fingers against the table. Perhaps they prefer isolation. Some species do. The silent reaches, for instance. The silent reaches are irrelevant, Krath interrupted. They claim no territory we desire. Humans occupy 7 disputed border systems. Systems we granted them temporary access to 40 years ago. Temporary. His tail lashed. They've overstayed their welcome, and they have no one to protect them. Vashtar studied the star chart. Humanity's systems formed a loose cluster, beautiful in their isolation, unconnected to the greater political machinery of the galaxy. No tripwires, no complications, no ancient allies who might object to pressure. They're diplomatically naive, she said slowly. They don't understand how power works in this galaxy. They think goodwill and honest trade are sufficient. They think wrong, Krath said. Kelthrin highlighted the 7 disputed systems, rich in rare minerals, strategically positioned along 3 major trade routes. The Council had been patient, waiting for humanity to establish infrastructure to make the systems valuable. Now the harvest could begin. Proposal, Vashtar said, her voice carrying the weight of decision. We issue a formal ultimatum. Humanity withdraws from the disputed territories within 10 standard days or faces immediate military action. We offer generous compensation, enough to save face, not enough to matter. And if they refuse? Mevrin asked. Then we take the systems by force, Krath said. We mobilize the full border fleet, 300 warships against their scattered defenses. He bared his teeth. It will be brief. They'll look for allies, Mevrin warned. In desperation, species often look where? Kelthrin's laugh was a chittering sound. Our intelligence is absolute. They have no one. The Vorkai Dominion considers them too primitive for formal relations. The Celtic Empire finds them philosophically distasteful. The Silver Consortium views them as commercial competitors. He spread his claws. Humanity stands alone because no one wants to stand with them. Vashtar watched the hologram rotate slowly. 300 human systems glowing in isolation. A civilization that had somehow missed the fundamental lesson every spacefaring species learned in the dark between the stars. How you survived by making yourself indispensable to others. By weaving yourself into the fabric of treaties and obligations until attacking you meant unraveling everything. Humans had woven nothing. They were a loose thread waiting to be pulled. "Call the vote," she said. The vote was unanimous. Even Mivrin, with her caution, could see the logic. An isolated species, valuable territory, no complications, no risk. They drafted the ultimatum that night. Formal, generous in its language, absolute in its demand. The human ambassador would receive it in the morning, and then they would see how a species without allies chose to face the inevitable. In the chamber's dimming light, none of them noticed the faint tremor in their intelligence network. A slight anomaly in the data, a whisper of something their algorithms couldn't quite categorize. Something that suggested their information, while accurate, might not be complete. The human ambassador arrived exactly on time. This somehow annoyed Vashtar more than if he'd been late. Ambassador Chen Wei walked into the council chamber with the unhurried gait of someone attending a routine meeting, not a civilization-ending ultimatum. His simple gray suit contrasted sharply with the ornate robes and ceremonial armor of the council members. "Ambassador Chen," Vashtar said, her voice formal. "The Council of Therion has reviewed humanity's continued occupation of the disputed border systems." Chen nodded once, his expression neutral. "I've read your ultimatum." "Then you understand the situation," Kelthrin said. 10 days to withdraw completely or face military consequences." "I understand what you've written," Chen replied, and he clasped his hands behind his back. "I need 48 hours to consult with Earth." Krath's scales rippled with amusement. 48 hours to accept the inevitable? We're not negotiating, Ambassador. "Neither am I, General." Chen's voice remained level. "I'm following protocol. My government needs to review your ultimatum and formulate our response. 48 hours is standard for matters of this magnitude." Vashtar studied the human. No fear in his eyes, no anger, just patience, as if this were merely an administrative inconvenience. "Very well," she said, 48 hours. "But understand, Ambassador, the terms are final. There will be no extensions, no negotiations, no—" "I understand," Chen said. "Thank you for your time." He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that somehow didn't feel like submission, and left. "He's stalling," Krath said once the doors sealed, "buying time to look for help that doesn't exist." "Let him look," Vashtar said. "It changes nothing." Chen's ship departed the council station within the hour. In the intelligence center, 3 decks below the council chamber, analysts tracked its trajectory with professional interest. "Standard departure vector," Senior Analyst Threxus reported. "Heading toward human space, as expected." "Communications?" his supervisor asked. "Multiple quantum burst transmissions, heavily encrypted." Threxus pulled up the intercept logs. "Routing is odd." "Define odd." Threxus highlighted the transmission paths. "He's not just broadcasting to Earth, he's sending signals to coordinates in 17 different sectors. Empty space, according to our charts. Relay stations? No energy signatures. No infrastructure." Threxus clicked his beak in confusion. "It's like he's broadcasting to nothing." "Probably redundancy protocols," the supervisor said. "Paranoid species, humans? They probably have hidden relay networks." He made a note in the file. "Flag it for review, but it's not a priority. What matters is that he can't find what doesn't exist." Threxus filed the report and moved on to other matters. The anomaly joined thousands of other minor irregularities in the intelligence database, noticed, catalogued, and forgotten. 47 hours later, Chen's ship returned. The council reconvened, their patience wearing thin. Krath had spent the intervening time mobilizing the border fleet, 300 warships, the largest force assembled in this sector in a generation. They now waited at staging positions, ready to move the moment the ultimatum expired. "Ambassador Chen," Vashtar said as he entered, "your government's response?" Chen walked to the center of the chamber, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. "Earth has reviewed your ultimatum. We decline." Silence. Then Kelthrin's mandibles clacked in disbelief. "You decline?" The systems in question were granted to humanity under the Outer Territories Settlement Act, Chen said calmly. "We've invested 4 decades in infrastructure development. We've established civilian populations. We've fulfilled every legal requirement. We will not abandon our citizens." "Legal requirements?" Krath stood, his full height towering over the human. "We are the law in this sector, Ambassador. We granted those rights, and we can revoke them." "That's certainly one interpretation," Chen said. "Why, it's the only interpretation that matters." Vashtar felt her patience snap. "You have no choice, Ambassador. Look at your position. You have no allies. No treaties. No one who will stand with you against the Council fleet." She gestured at the holographic display, which now showed the massed Therian warships. 300 capital ships, Ambassador. Can you match that?" "No," Chen said simply. "Then you have 3 days remaining," Vashtar said. "After that, we will take those systems by force, and humanity will learn a very expensive lesson about galactic politics." Chen was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We've consulted our friends. They're on their way." The word hung in the air. "Friends?" Kelthrin's voice dripped with scorn. "You have no friends, Ambassador. Our intelligence is comprehensive. You have no treaties, no pacts, no formal alliances of any kind." "That's correct," Chen agreed. "We have no treaties." "Then who exactly are these friends?" Krath demanded. "You'll see," Chen said. 3 days, you said? They'll be here in 2. He turned and walked toward the exit. "This is madness," Mevrin called after him. "You're leading your people into a massacre based on, what, hope? Delusion?" Chen paused at the doorway. For the first time, something like emotion crossed his face. Not fear, not desperation. A smile. "You were right about one thing," he said. "We have no allies. Your intelligence is accurate." The smile widened slightly. "But I never said anything about allies." He left. In the war room, Krath paced like a caged predator. "It's a bluff. It has to be." "Our intelligence shows nothing," Kelthrin insisted, poring over data streams. "No fleet movements toward human space. No diplomatic cables indicating support. Nothing." "Could they have hidden allies?" Mevrin asked. "Species we don't know about?" "Impossible. We've monitored this sector for millennia. Every spacefaring civilization is cataloged, assessed, integrated into our political models." Kelthrin's claws trembled slightly. "There's no one. There can't be anyone." Vashtar stared at the holographic display. 3 days. Chen had said his friends would arrive in 2. "Increase surveillance," she ordered. "I want every sensor array in human space monitored. If a single unidentified ship appears, I want to know immediately." "And if something does appear?" Krath asked. "Then we destroy it," Vashtar said, "before whatever desperate plan Chen has concocted can materialize." But even as she gave the orders, how she felt something unfamiliar crawling up her spine. Doubt. Chen's smile haunted her. The certainty in his voice. The complete absence of fear. Either he was insane, or he knew something they didn't. She hoped, for humanity's sake, it was the former. 2 days passed. The Council fleet held position at the border, weapons primed, crews on full alert. Intelligence analysts worked triple shifts, scanning every transmission, every energy signature, every quantum fluctuation. They found nothing. 6 hours before the ultimatum expired, Vashtar stood in the command center aboard the fleet flagship. Around her, dozens of officers monitored their stations, their efficiency a testament to millennia of military tradition. "Status?" she asked. "All ships ready," Kreith reported. "Human defenses are minimal. We'll have orbital superiority within the hour." "Ambassador Chen?" "His ship remains in human space. No attempt to flee. No distress signals." Kelthrin shook his head. Nothing. Whatever he was counting on, it didn't materialize. Mevrin approached, her crystalline features grave. "Prime, perhaps we should offer one final—" The sensor station erupted in alarms. "Contact!" the sensor officer shouted. "Multiple contacts! Incoming ships at—" He stopped, his voice strangling. "Impossible. Sensors show 70. No, 90. Contacts. Still climbing. From where?" Kreth demanded. "Everywhere," the officer whispered. "They're coming from everywhere." The main display lit up like a star chart, coming alive. Odd jump signatures blossomed across a dozen vectors, ships emerging from faster-than-light travel in a coordinated arrival that should have been impossible to orchestrate. Vashtar's blood went cold as the first ship resolved on their screens. It wasn't human. It was Kellish, a species the Council had uplifted 3 centuries ago, saved from a dying star. A species that owed the Council everything. Then more ships appeared. Vorkai designs, Kelthic cruisers, Silver Consortium vessels, species from across the sector, species with their own agendas, their own territories, their own conflicts with each other, all converging on the same coordinates, all moving to flank the human systems. "Get me ship counts," Vashtar ordered, her voice deadly calm. The numbers scrolled across her screen, each one a hammer blow. 140 ships. 180. 230. The contacts kept coming. Kelthrin stared at his intelligence screens as if they'd personally betrayed him. "This isn't possible. None of these species have treaties with humanity. None of them have defensive pacts. None of them have any formal obligation to—" "Incoming transmission," the communications officer said, "from the human ambassador." "Put him on screen," Vashtar said. Chen appeared, standing on the bridge of his ship. Behind him, human crew members worked with the same calm efficiency they'd shown throughout this crisis. "Council Prime," Chen said, "I believe you wanted to see our friends." "Those ships," Vashtar said slowly, "have no treaty obligations to humanity." "No," Chen agreed, "they don't." "Then why are they here?" Chen's expression softened. "Because we asked them to be." The command center descended into chaos. "Get me tactical analysis," Kreith roared. "Ship classifications, weapons loadouts, formation patterns." 267 ships and still counting, the tactical officer reported, his voice climbing with each word. "Mixed fleet composition. Kellish dreadnoughts, Vorkai carriers, Kelthic strike cruisers, Silver Consortium." "I can see what they are," Kreith snarled. "I want to know why they're here." On the main screen, Chen waited patiently. Behind him, his bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, monitoring the arriving fleet with no apparent surprise, as if this had been expected all along. "Ambassador," Vashtar said, forcing control into her voice, "explain this." "Which part would you like explained?" Chen asked. "The ships? The species? Or why your intelligence failed to predict this?" Kelthrin slammed his claws against his console. "Our intelligence didn't fail. You have no treaties with these species. No formal alliances, no defensive pacts. We verified. You verified correctly, Chen interrupted. We have no treaties with any of them. Then why? Because 30 years ago, humanity negotiated a peaceful resolution to the Kalish-Vorkai border conflict, Chen said simply. Both sides were heading toward war. We mediated. We found common ground. We prevented millions of deaths. He gestured at the display. 22 years ago, the Celtic Empire suffered a plague outbreak. Their medical infrastructure couldn't handle the scale. We sent research teams, shared our epidemiological data, helped them develop a vaccine. We didn't ask for payment. But we didn't demand concessions. 18 years ago, he continued, the Silver Consortium's primary trade route collapsed when the Narcissus Gateway destabilized. Their economy was in free fall. We shared our alternative routing algorithms. We helped them rebuild their logistics network. We asked for nothing in return. Vashtar felt something cold settling in her chest. You help them. We help everyone we can, Chen said. It's what we do. Another transmission signal lit up the communications board, then another, and another. Incoming hails, the communications officer said weakly. 17 separate fleet commanders requesting communication channels with Council Prime. Ignore them, Krath ordered. Sir, one of them is Ambassador Talith of the Kalish Confederation. They're insistent. Vashtar closed her eyes briefly. The Kalish, a species the Therian Coalition had saved from stellar collapse. A species that should have been grateful, loyal. Put him through, she said. Side channel. Ambassador Talith appeared on a secondary screen. His scaled features were set in an expression Vashtar had never seen from a Kalish diplomat before. Determination. Council Prime, Talith said formally. The Kalish Confederation has been informed of your ultimatum to humanity. We find it unacceptable. This doesn't concern you, Ambassador, Vashtar said. This is a matter between the Council and... It concerns us because humanity is our friend, Talith said. The word landed like a physical blow. When our son died, the Council granted us 3 barren moons to survive on. You called it generosity. But it was humanity who taught us hydroponics advanced enough to feed our population. Humanity who shared asteroid mining techniques that made those moons livable. You gave us survival. They gave us a future. We saved your entire species, Vashtar said, her voice rising. You owe us everything. We owe you gratitude, Talith agreed. We give you trade. We give you respect. We honor our historical debt. His eyes hardened. But we owe humanity our children's lives, and that debt is paid in friendship, not treaties. The transmission cut. Vashtar turned back to Chen. How many? She asked quietly. How many species did you help? Enough, Chen said. More transmissions flooded in. Kelthrin frantically tried to catalog them, his analytical mind struggling to process what his instruments were telling him. A Vorkai delegation confirms 48 ships en route, he read, his voice hollow. Reason given. Humanity provided disaster relief after the conjunction storms. Celtic Empire confirms 63 ships. Reason, medical aid during the 3-year plague. Silver Consortium confirms 51 ships. Reason, economic cooperation during the Gateway crisis. He looked up from his console, his mandibles trembling. Prime, these aren't military alliances. These are gratitude fleets. Gratitude doesn't mobilize 267 warships, Krath said, but his voice lacked conviction. Doesn't it? Chen asked. When someone saves your children, do you wait for a treaty to be signed before you help them in return? When someone asks for nothing and gives you everything, do you need a legal document to feel obligated? Mevrin spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. We uplifted the Kalish. We integrated the Vorkai into our trade networks. We've maintained this sector's stability for 6,000 years. Why don't they come when we call? Because you never asked, Chen said. You commanded. You leveraged. You reminded them of debts and obligations. He shook his head. We asked. We said, we need help. Will you come? And they said yes. The tactical display updated again, more ships emerging from FTL. The count climbed past 300. How did you even know they would come? Vashtar demanded. You have no treaties, no guarantees. They could have said no. For the first time, Chen's expression showed something other than calm professionalism. He looked almost sad. Oh, we knew they would come, he said quietly, because when they asked us for help, we went. Every time, without hesitation, without conditions, without asking what we would get in return. He met Vashtar's eyes. You're right that we don't understand how power works in this galaxy. We don't think of relationships as leverage. We don't measure friendship in treaty clauses. That's naive, Kraeth said. Perhaps, Chen acknowledged, but our naive approach just brought 300 warships to our defense. How many ships would come if you called for help right now, General? How many of your treaty-bound allies would volunteer to fight beside you? Silence answered him. Another transmission cut through, this one on the priority military channel. The communications officer looked up, his face pale. Council Prime, an incoming message from Admiral Thesh. He's requesting immediate orders. The arriving fleet they're taking formation around the human systems. Not aggressive formation. Defensive. They're shielding humanity, Kelthrin said, staring at the tactical display in disbelief. They've positioned themselves between us and the human colonies. 318 ships now, the tactical officer reported. We're outnumbered almost exactly 2-1. Kraeth's claws clenched. We can still fight. Our ships are the finest in the sector. Our crews are trained for what? Mevrin interrupted. For fighting 18 different species simultaneously? Species who share no common command structure, no unified doctrine, making them unpredictable? Most species who clearly feel strongly enough about humanity to risk their own ships? We mobilized our fleet to intimidate an isolated species, she continued, her crystalline form seeming to dim. We're now facing a coalition motivated by something far stronger than treaties. Loyalty, Chen said softly. Gratitude, friendship. You can call it naive, but you can't call it weak. Vashtar stared at the display, watching the ships arrange themselves in defensive positions. Kellish dreadnoughts alongside Vorkai carriers. Kelthic cruisers coordinating with Silver Consortium escorts. Natural rivals, former enemies, competitive trading partners, all united, not by documents, by choice. Your intelligence was correct, she said slowly. Humanity has no formal allies. Yes, Chen said. Yeah, Tiamen. But you have 300 ships willing to fight for you. 331 now, the tactical officer corrected weakly. Chen nodded. We don't have allies, Council Prime. We have something that doesn't fit neatly into your intelligence reports or political models. He paused. We have friends who answer when we call. Not because they must, because they want to. Vashtar felt the weight of 6,000 years of council doctrine crumbling. Everything they had built, the careful web of treaties, the calculated obligations, the leveraged debts, suddenly seemed hollow against the simplicity of what she was witnessing. You were only half right, Chen said, echoing the human phrase that had started this crisis. We don't have allies, but we were never alone. On the tactical display, another wave of ships emerged from FTL. A small craft, personal vessels, civilian freighters retrofitted with weapons. Dozens of them, then hundreds, bearing the markings of a dozen minor species. Worlds too small to maintain military fleets. Civilizations too young to have political weight in council chambers. All converging on humanity. What are those? Kraeth asked. Chen checked his display, and something like wonder crossed his face. We helped them establish orbital infrastructure 7 years ago, and we provided terraforming data when their colony was failing, and those ships are from the Thex Collective. We mediated their independence negotiations. They have no warships, Kelthrin said. Those are cargo haulers, mining vessels. They're civilians. They're friends, Chen corrected. And they're answering the call. Vashtar watched the ragtag fleet take positions alongside the military vessels. Inadequate, poorly armed, tactically irrelevant, and absolutely devastating to any remaining illusion of Council superiority. These weren't species protecting an investment. These weren't treaty-bound obligations being fulfilled. These were people who had chosen to risk their lives for humanity, because humanity had risked for them first. "Council Prime," Admiral Thesh's voice came through, strained. "I need orders. We have over 400 vessels in defensive formation around human space, more arriving every hour. Our tactical advantage has evaporated. If we engage, we'll be fighting a coalition that outmatches us in numbers, desperation, and—" he paused. "And conviction. Ma'am, they believe in what they're doing. But our crews are confused why we're even here." Vashtar looked at Chen's calm face on the screen. "You planned this," she said. "No," Chen replied. "We asked for help. We didn't know who would come. We didn't know how many. We just knew." He smiled faintly. "We knew we'd treated people well enough that someone would answer." "You built an empire without treaties," Mevrin said, her voice filled with something between horror and awe. "You created a coalition without formal structure. You mobilized hundreds of ships with nothing but goodwill." "We didn't build an empire," Chen said firmly. "We made friends. There's a difference." The communications board lit up again. This time the signal came from within the Council fleet itself. "Council Prime," the communications officer said, his voice breaking. "Incoming transmission from the Kellish ships attached to our fleet. They're requesting permission to break formation and join the defensive coalition." Kraith's scales went white. "They're defecting? They're choosing," Chen said quietly. "Council Prime," the Kellish captain appeared on screen, looking uncomfortable but resolute. "The Confederation has called. We must answer. Our treaty obligations to the Council will be honored. We'll return to normal duties after this crisis. But today, we stand with humanity." The transmission ended. Vashtar felt the last pillar of her certainty collapse. They hadn't just miscalculated humanity's isolation. They'd miscalculated what held civilizations together. And now, surrounded by the proof of their error, as the mighty Therian coalition faced a truth that no intelligence report could have warned them about. Power built on obligation could be measured, predicted, controlled. But power built on friendship? That was something else entirely. The council chamber felt smaller than it had 3 days ago. Vashtar stood at the obsidian table, staring at the holographic display that now showed a very different picture than before. The Therian fleet, still 300 strong, hung at the border like a predator that had suddenly realized its prey had teeth and claws, and several hundred friends with similar dental arrangements. "Withdrawal," Kraith said, the word tasting like poison. "You're suggesting withdrawal." "I'm suggesting we don't commit suicide," Mevrin replied. Her crystalline features had lost their usual luminescence. "We mobilized to intimidate an isolated species. We're now facing a volunteer coalition of over 400 ships with more arriving hourly." "They're not a unified force," Kraith insisted. "No common command structure, no integrated tactical doctrine. A dozen species who probably can't even communicate effectively with each other." "They don't need to communicate," Vashtar interrupted quietly. "They all know what they're protecting." She pulled up the latest intelligence reports. The data made her chest tighten. 17 species had sent military vessels. 32 species had sent civilian craft. Messages of support had flooded in from 47 additional civilizations too distant to send ships, but offering resources, sanctuary, supply lines. And every single message said the same thing in different words. Humanity helped us. Now we help them. Our fleet commanders are requesting orders, Kelthrin said, his mandibles clicking nervously. Admiral Thesh reports morale is degrading. The crews don't understand the mission anymore. We told them we were enforcing territorial rights against an isolated species. Now they're facing species we've trained, species we've traded with, species we've called partners, species we've uplifted, Mevrin added softly. The Kellish crews in our fleet are requesting transfer to the defensive coalition. The Vorkai officers are questioning why we're threatening humanity in the first place. She looked at Vashtar. Prime, we're not just losing tactical advantage, we're losing the narrative. Vashtar knew she was right. Word was spreading across the galaxy, not through official channels, but through the informal networks that species actually used to communicate. Traders, travelers, families with relatives in different star systems. The story being told wasn't Therian Council enforces territorial law. It was Therian Council threatens species beloved by half the sector. How did our intelligence miss this? Kelthrin asked, almost pleading. How did we not see that humanity had built this network? Because we were looking for the wrong things, Vashtar said. She pulled up the original intelligence reports, the ones that had assured them humanity stood alone. We looked for treaties, defense pacts, formal alliances, trade agreements with military clauses, everything that matters in council politics. She highlighted the data they'd dismissed as irrelevant. Aid shipments, medical exchanges, scientific cooperation, educational programs, technology sharing agreements that asked for nothing in return. We saw all of this, she continued. We cataloged it, filed it, marked it as civilian affairs. Because in our doctrine, civilian relationships don't matter. They don't affect power calculations. They don't move fleets. Except they did, Mevrin said. Except they did, Vashtar agreed. A new transmission alert appeared. Vashtar almost didn't want to open it, but Kelthrin was already pulling up the data. It's from the Kelthic Empire, he said. Official diplomatic communique. They're requesting we stand down. They're citing the historical friendship between the Kelthic people and humanity, and expressing concern about council aggression toward a valued partner in medical research. The Kelthic Empire has a mutual defense treaty with us, Kraeth said, his voice hollow. They're not breaking it, Kelthrin said, scanning the message. They're just expressing concern, requesting de-escalation, suggesting that perhaps the territorial dispute could be resolved through arbitration rather than force. They're abandoning us diplomatically while maintaining legal compliance with the treaty, Mevrin observed. Technically honoring the document while making it clear where their sympathies lie. More alerts appeared. The Silver Consortium, the Vorleth Collective, the Magistracy of Thel, all expressing concern, all suggesting peaceful resolution, all carefully avoiding breaking any treaties while making their positions crystal clear. They wouldn't fight for the Council, but they would remember who threatened humanity. This is what we've built? Kraeth asked, looking at the cascade of diplomatic messages. 6,000 years of treaties, and when we need support, we get concern? Suggestions? Careful neutrality? We built obligations, Vashtar said, not loyalty. There's a difference. She thought of the ragtag fleet assembling around human space. Cargo haulers that had no business in a combat zone, mining vessels with improvised weapons, personal craft whose owners had apparently decided that friendship was worth risking their lives for. None of them had to be there. All of them chose to be. Open a channel to Ambassador Chen, she said. Chen appeared on the main screen within seconds. His bridge was quieter now, the initial crisis stabilization complete. Behind him, human crew members worked with the same calm competence that had characterized every interaction. "Council Prime," Chen said, "have you made a decision?" "The Council requests negotiations," Vashtar said. The words felt like admitting defeat. They were admitting defeat. "We're prepared to discuss the territorial dispute through diplomatic channels. No military action, no ultimatums." "The disputed systems remain under human administration during negotiations," Chen said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "And there will be no economic sanctions, no trade restrictions, no pressure tactics while negotiations proceed." Vashtar glanced at Kelthrin, who nodded miserably. Whilst any economic pressure would now be complicated by the fact that dozens of species would probably step in to help humanity anyway. "Agreed," Vashtar said. "Then we accept," Chen said. "I'll coordinate with Earth. We can begin preliminary talks within the week." He should have been gloating, Vashtar thought. He'd just forced the Therian Council to back down from the largest military mobilization in a generation. He'd revealed weaknesses in Council intelligence and doctrine that would take years to address. He'd demonstrated that humanity, despite having no formal alliances, could mobilize a coalition larger than the Council's own fleet. He should have been savoring this victory. Instead, he just looked tired and perhaps a little sad. "Council Prime," Chen said quietly, "may I speak candidly?" "You've earned that right," Vashtar said. "We didn't want this confrontation. When we helped the Kellish develop sustainable agriculture, we weren't building a coalition. When we shared medical data with the Kelthic Empire, we weren't creating a defensive pact. When we helped negotiate the Vorkai border dispute, we weren't securing future military support." He paused. "We just saw people who needed help, and we helped them, that's all." "That's not all," Mevrin said. "You built something, whether you intended to or not." "Perhaps," Chen acknowledged, "but what we built wasn't power, it was relationships." And the difference between those two things is that power has to be maintained through constant effort and threat. Relationships. He gestured at the display showing the defensive fleet. "Relationships maintain themselves." "Is that why they came?" Vashtar asked. "Because the relationship maintained itself?" "They came because we asked," Chen said simply. "And because when they asked us, we came. That's how friendship works." The transmission ended. Kraeth broke the silence first. "We need to recalibrate our entire intelligence doctrine. Our political models are based on treaty networks and formal obligations. If informal relationships can mobilize this kind of response, we need to rethink everything," Vashtar interrupted. "Our treaties, our alliances, our approach to diplomacy." She looked at the holographic display, at the Council fleet that suddenly seemed less like a demonstration of power and more like a monument to misunderstanding. "We ruled this sector for 6,000 years by making ourselves necessary through treaties and obligations," she continued. "Humanity has been here for 2 centuries and made themselves beloved through generosity and aid. Which approach do you think is more sustainable?" None of them had an answer. Across the galaxy, word spread. Not through official channels. Those were clogged with carefully worded diplomatic statements and legal analyses of treaty obligations. It spread through the channels that mattered, the informal networks, the personal connections, the relationships between individuals who knew each other, trusted each other, cared about each other. The story was simple. Humanity had been threatened. Humanity had asked for help, and hundreds had answered. The Therian Council had learned what humanity's lack of formal allies really meant. They'd been only half right about humanity standing alone 3 weeks later. Ambassador Chen returned to the Council station for the first preliminary negotiation session. The Council chamber was different now. Subtly, but noticeably. The obsidian table was the same. The holographic displays showed the same star charts. But the atmosphere had changed. The certainty that had filled this room for millennia had been replaced by something more cautious, more humble. Chen entered with the same unhurried gait, but this time Vashtar noticed details she'd missed before. The way his posture suggested confidence without arrogance. The way his eyes took in everything without appearing to judge. The way he carried himself like someone who had nothing to prove. Because, she realized, he didn't. "Ambassador," Vashtar said, gesturing to a seat at the table, "thank you for coming." "Of course," Chen said, settling into the chair. "I'm looking forward to productive discussions." The negotiations themselves were brief, surprisingly so. The Council offered a revised territorial agreement that granted humanity full sovereignty over 6 of the 7 disputed systems, with the 7th designated as a shared scientific research zone. Trade agreements were formalized, communication protocols established. Everything documented, filed, made official. Everything humanity could have had 3 weeks ago, without the fleet mobilization, without the confrontation, without the crisis. If the Council had simply asked instead of demanded. As the final documents were authenticated, Kelthrin couldn't contain his confusion any longer. "Why didn't you fight?" he asked suddenly. All eyes turned to him, but he pressed on. "You had 400 ships. We had 300. Yeah, you had numerical superiority, tactical advantage, and the moral high ground. You could have destroyed our fleet, humiliated the Council, demonstrated human power to the entire galaxy. But you just negotiated," he continued, his mandibles clicking in genuine bewilderment. "You let us retreat with dignity. You accepted compromise on the 7th system when you could have demanded all of them. Why?" Chen was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "Because we didn't call those ships to win a war," he said finally. "We called them to prevent one. That's not how power works," Kraeth said, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "That's not how your power works," Chen corrected gently. "You measure strength in the ability to destroy, to conquer, to force compliance." He shook his head. We measure strength in the ability to protect, to build, to inspire voluntary cooperation. Those 400 ships didn't come because we ordered them to," he continued. "They came because they chose to. And that choice, that voluntary decision to stand with us, is worth more than any victory we could have forced. Because it means next time we need help, they'll choose again." Mevrin leaned forward, her crystalline features reflecting the light in fractal patterns. "What if we had chosen to fight anyway? What if we'd called your bluff?" "It wasn't a bluff," Chen said simply. "They would have fought, and yes, we probably would have won. But hundreds, maybe thousands, would have died. Families would have been shattered. Grudges would have been created that could last generations." He met her eyes. What would we have gained that was worth that cost? 7 systems, Kraeth said. "We got 6 systems through negotiation," Chen pointed out. "And we maintained our relationships with everyone involved, including you." He gestured around the chamber. "The Council isn't our enemy. You made a mistake based on incomplete information and outdated assumptions. We've all made mistakes. The question is whether we learn from them." Vashtar felt something shift inside her. For 6,000 years, the Therian Council had operated on a simple principle. Strength was the ability to make others comply with your will. Military strength, economic strength, the strength of treaties that bound others to your service. Humanity had revealed a different kind of strength entirely. The strength to inspire loyalty without demanding it. The strength to help without expecting return. The strength to be powerful enough to destroy your enemies, but wise enough to make friends instead. "The galaxy is talking about what happened here," Vashtar said quietly. "About humanity, about the ships that came, about what it means." "I know," Chen said. Some of our treaty partners are reconsidering their relationships with the Council, she continued. They're asking why they've maintained these obligations. They're looking at how humanity operates and wondering if there's a better way. That concerns you, Chen observed. It terrifies me, Vashtar admitted. The Council's power has always been based on predictable structures, treaties we can enforce, obligations we can invoke, networks we can leverage. If species start prioritizing friendship over formal agreements, or if they start choosing who to support based on relationships rather than legal documents. She spread her hands. Everything we've built becomes uncertain. Or, Mevrin said softly, everything you've built has the opportunity to become something better. Chen stood, smoothing his simple gray suit. Council Prime, you asked me earlier if I was afraid during the confrontation, if I worried that no one would come when we called. Yes, Vashtar said. I was terrified, Chen admitted. Because friendship isn't a guarantee. It's a choice. And every time you rely on it, you're trusting that the relationships you've built are real, that the good you've done matters, that people will remember when it counts. He smiled faintly. But that terror, that uncertainty, is what makes it meaningful. Treaties work because they have to. Modern friendship works because people want it to. And when someone chooses to stand with you, not because they're obligated, but because they care. He paused. That's worth more than 1,000 signed documents. So you're saying we should abandon 6,000 years of diplomatic doctrine, Kraith said. Just start over? I'm saying you should consider adding to it, Chen replied. Your treaties have kept this sector stable. That matters. That's valuable. But maybe stability isn't enough. Maybe what civilizations really need isn't just the absence of conflict, but the presence of genuine connection. He moved toward the exit, then paused and turned back. You were only half right about us, he said. We don't have allies, not in the formal sense, but we were never alone, and neither are you. If you're willing to build relationships instead of just obligations. After he left, the council sat in silence. Finally, Mivrin spoke. He's right, you know, about all of it. Perhaps, Vashtar said, but changing doctrine that's worked for 6,000 years. Has it worked? Mevrin interrupted. Or have we just been powerful enough that no one challenged us before? She gestured at the empty chair where Chen had sat. They challenged us, and they won. Not with superior weapons or larger fleets, but with friendships we didn't know existed because we weren't looking for them. So what do we do? Kelthrin asked. Vashtar looked at the holographic display, showing the sector they'd ruled for so long. The treaty networks, the obligation chains, the careful structures of power and compliance. And somewhere beyond that display, she knew, was a web of informal connections, of species who helped each other not because they had to, but because they chose to. A network built on trust and gratitude and the simple act of showing up when asked. Humanity had been in this sector for 2 centuries. They'd already changed it forever. We learn, Vashtar said finally. We watch how humanity operates. We study what they've built. And we decide if 6,000 years of tradition is more important than adapting to a galaxy that's moving forward without us. She stood, straightening her ceremonial robes. Call a full council session, she ordered. Every delegation, every treaty partner, every species in the Therian network. She paused. We need to have a conversation about what alliances really mean. 2 months later, Chen received a message from Council Prime Vashtar. Though the Therian Council was hosting a sector-wide conference on alternative diplomatic frameworks, they were inviting representatives from every species in the region, not just treaty partners, but everyone. They wanted to discuss cooperation without coercion, aid without obligation, relationships built on choice rather than compulsion. It was a start, the message said, a small one. But perhaps that's how real change always began. Chen smiled as he read it, then composed a simple reply. Humanity will be there, along with our friends. He didn't need to specify how many friends. By now, everyone knew. In the years that followed, the sector changed. Not overnight, and not completely. The Therion Council maintained its treaties, its structures, its formal networks of power. But they began to supplement them with something else. With genuine outreach, with aid that asked nothing in return, with the slow, patient work of building relationships that mattered. It wasn't easy. Millennia of doctrine didn't disappear because of one confrontation. Old habits were hard to break. But when the Kelthic Empire faced another crisis and the Council sent help without demanding concessions, something shifted. When the Vorkai Dominion requested assistance and the Council provided it freely, something changed. Slowly, carefully, the galaxy learned a truth that humanity had known all along. Power built on obligation could move fleets, but power built on friendship could move civilizations. And in the end, that made all the difference. What do you think about this clash between alien arrogance and human power? Share your thoughts below, and remember to like and subscribe for more HFY stories. The Council had been only half right. Humanity had no allies. They had something far more dangerous. They had friends who would follow them anywhere, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And in a galaxy built on obligations, that changed everything.